Welcome to show 51. Believe it or not, 1 year ago, we got going. And so this is a happy moment because it's International Happiness Day and it's the first day of spring. So we have 3 reasons to be happy. No. A 4th reason, because we're going to visit people who live in one of my favorite places in the world, Vancouver. And they're going to invite us all to visit them at the end of the show, right? So we're going to hear from Anil Shrestha. We're going to hear from Joanna Zong. We're going to hear from Chris Cowley. And we're going to hear from Hailene Chen. We're also going to hear from the deans who are involved in this project at UBC that involves forestry and forestry management. And so we're going to hear from a couple people that we didn't even know we'd be hearing from today because they've just jumped in and decided to join us. John Innes, the Dean of UBC Faculty of Forestry, Director of AP FECM, and Professor Wang is with us as well, the Associate Dean. So Chris, apologies for pronouncing your name wrong, Chris Crowley. I want to get that right. So what we want to do is divide this up a bit into 2 parts. One will be a big picture of what's been happening, and the second part will be more about implementation efforts. And the second part will have some slides that Hinling will show us and people will talk about. But first, we'd like to get Professor Wang and John to introduce what's been going on, why this initiative has taken off around the world, who's involved in terms of the partnerships, and whether or not the global collaboration efforts that have taken place and have been underway in this project can be replicated in some ways. What can people learn from this project and maybe in turn utilize to help their networks spring and grow around the world? This is the 4th or 5th show that we've done in terms of the environment. And we all have learned about environmental and forestry related issues in North America and in Australia and other parts of the world during the past year, the fires in California being hot in our memories. So, John, you want to take us into the project a bit. How did this get started? What has transpired? And what benefits from this project can we all learn from it? And tell us what the project is, because it's a long name.
Well, thank you very much, Kurt, for the opportunity to talk to you today. We've been working on this concept of sustainable forest management for some time. Excuse me. The idea of sustainably managing timber supply has been around for a very long time. It was practiced in Japan in the 1600s and formalized in Europe in the 17 and 1800s. But over time, we've realized it's more than just about providing timber. We're also concerned about supplying fresh water, protecting our soils, protecting our biodiversity, increasingly now about sequestering carbon, and about the spiritual and cultural benefits associated with foresters. In some places, people haven't really moved to that. So we see in North America and many parts of the tropics, people degrading forests still, and that's been a serious problem. It's also why March 21st has been designated International Day of Forests. And this year is focusing on forest restoration. So what really concerned us was that these many forests around the world continue to be degraded through poor management practices. And we approached the Asia Pacific Network for Sustainable Forest Management and Rehabilitation with an idea that we could train people around the world in the best possible techniques in sustainable forest management. And to do that, we drew on expertise from around the world. And I'm going to ask Guangyu Wang to actually explain a little bit how we actually achieved that.
Thank you, John. Helen, can I have the slide? Next slide, please. Yeah, John just mentioned about the background. So we have the network called Asia Pacific Forestry Education Network. This network was formed by all the universities in the Asia Pacific region. They have the forestry school. So in the first meeting, the dean's meeting, so all the dean in the Asia Pacific region, they have proposed to say whatever we can have like they propose some courses that can be used for the Asia Pacific region. So UBC was a lead faculty, and also we had the Beijing Forestry University, University of Melbourne, University of the UBLB from Philippines, also UBC CDLT. That is our Center for Teaching and Learning Technology. So we had a sponsorship from APMNet, just John mentioned, the Asia Pacific Network for Sustainable Forest Management and Rehabilitation. Next. And the vision is to develop the regional recognized core curriculum, aiming to support our young faculty or to our senior forestry student, and also the mid-career professional to know about sustainable forest management. So we invite the professor, the key professor, and we can say the famous professor in the Asia Pacific Basin to give to provide the expertise for give those kind of courses. Next, Adam. And after we started with 2001 and 2011, and we got the Canadian National Award for the Integrated Technology Education Practice Excellence Award. And also we win the award from 2019 from UFRO, that is a International Union of the Forestry Research Organization. So it's a quite big award we got from national and international. Next, please. We, to just mention about the Asia Pacific Forestry Education Coordination Mechanism. This is we did all the courses. We go through this mechanism. Was using by most of the university in the Asia Pacific region. So in that region, we have 50 member university. We have 8 still committee member. Next. So this is all our network. So right now we have a quite good system to promote the sustainable forest management courses. Yeah, I will turn to Chris to give the introduction of what we're doing in the courses, right? What technical size.
Yeah, did you want to take a break, Curtis? And I thought this was going to be a.
Is it 5 minutes later
Yeah,
on?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah, I keep hitting the mute and unmute. So first of all, Chris or Young, do you want to jump in here?
Yes, I have a question. I think that there's a lot of misconceptions about forestry. Some people obviously view forests as just something to be looted. Some people view forests as something that, why would you manage a forest? You just leave it alone. It's the opposite of being looted. You ignore the forest other than using it as a place to go and appreciate. And yet management is important, as you know, for the forest to really reach its full potential. So I'm thinking that your program is teaching knowledge and skills that are related to forestry management. But I'm also wondering if you're teaching outreach to help people lose their misconceptions about forests and understand that even if they never go into a forest, even if they could care less about forests, their lifestyle is threatened if forests are not managed well. So I'm curious about how you handle sort of the outreach part of helping people manage forests.
Chris, that's a really important point, and it's one that troubles us all the time. It's something that we are trying to resolve in the forestry community as a whole. And there have been a number of important initiatives raised to try and directly reach the general public about the importance of forests. You're quite right, forests in many places need to be managed. And that's because they've already been severely altered by humans. Forests will survive on their own, and they can do. But unfortunately, most forests in North America, Europe, and increasingly in other parts of the world have been altered by people for thousands of years. If we just leave them now, they will get into a state where they are prone to major disasters. And that affects everybody. Last summer, we were choking on smoke from Oregon, where you are now. It was your fires that were causing us problems in Vancouver. And we see the same thing in other parts of the world. Smoke from Australian fires reached Chile and South America because of the wind systems. So we're all impacted by the way that we manage our forests in different parts of the world. It really is an important thing, though, to get the message out to the public in general, how important our forests are, what role they play, and how we need to protect them and manage them efficiently.
Did those outreach efforts change over the past few years, and in particular during the pandemic? I'm seeing when I've talked to your people in your department for the last few months, and I'm hearing increasingly things moving to online and blended forms of courses. So how are things shifting in terms of the outreach and in terms of the project as a whole?
Well, again, that's a really interesting question, because I would say that it was the pandemic that really brought this project to the fore, because we had been working on the development of these courses for some time. We had a number finished. And then in February and March last year, when many universities around the world had to pivot to online teaching, they were really left suddenly, you know, how do we do this? What do we do? Well-resourced universities were able to change, and UBC, for example, pivoted within the space of 3 days from face-to-face to online. But in places like Myanmar or Cambodia, many parts of China, they just did not have the resources to do that. And so they started using our courses and delivering our courses. So we had them on the shelf, they were ready to go. And it really brought attention to the importance of having high quality courses available in a way that can be used in other universities around the world.
By the way, John, just a quick question. Are all your courses translated into different languages?
No, they're not. They are all in English only.
Okay, thank you.
And it seems like there's a heavy emphasis, at least early on, in self-directed forms of learning and the utilization of open courseware and open educational resources. Why the heavy emphasis on OER? Is that something you specifically wrote into a grant and got money for, or is something that evolved over time?
It was the original idea. And when we started developing these courses, there were no such things as MOOCs. MOOCs actually were invented and developed after we started. We were struggling a little bit because we didn't really have a good business model for this. And I think MOOCs have since suffered from exactly the same problem. The advantage we had was having a good sponsor who basically paid us to develop the work, and then we could make it freely available. Whereas for many universities developing MOOCs, they had to try and recoup their costs somehow. And that's proven very, very difficult. So the emphasis initially was someone could take a course and basically run through it completely in their own time with no supervision. As we moved through time, we realized that a much better and more efficient way of delivering a course is to do it in a supervised fashion, so that there is an instructor interacting with the students. They can set weekly assignments. They can provide reassurance to students. They can help answer questions. And so we have moved away from just making something completely passive to a much more interactive model.
This reminds me, go ahead, Chris.
Well, I also think it's interesting how technologies are enabling kinds of outreach that just were not possible before. I don't know how your families have coped with the pandemic, but in my family, we're watching more television than we used to. And because most of the stuff on television is garbage, we're watching a lot of documentaries of different kinds. And I have been amazed by how those documentaries have changed in the last 5 years. They've got drones that can go to places that people could never go. They've got night cameras where they can look in the infrared spectrum and see all sorts of things. They have very powerful lenses that can put you right in a bird's face when clearly the bird would be long gone if they were even aware that a person was there. They're very compelling. And I also, myself and my colleagues at Harvard, build curricula for elementary and middle school students where we create virtual ecosystems. And just like an internet game, the kids go into the ecosystem, except that they play the role of an ecosystem scientist. For the elementary school students, we have a system that's a forest that evolves over time. Beavers come in as a keystone species. They create a pond that changes the trees, that changes who lives in the trees. Then woodpeckers come along, they're another keystone species. They change things. And these kids are getting to wear the shoes of adults and interact with a virtual forest. I just think that the opportunities now to use these more advanced technologies for outreach and potentially even for recruitment, some of those kids, I hope, are going to want to grow up and be forest managers. So it's an exciting time in terms of the opportunities, I think.
Yes, I totally agree. There are new technologies that are coming through that we've been experimenting with, including 360-degree cameras and also three-dimensional videos. But we still haven't resolved a few of the issues, like the availability of the equipment for the students to actually do a three-dimensional viewing, although there are some fairly cheap solutions available and getting cheaper every day. So there are a lot of technical developments that I think are making teaching in forestry really exciting.
So we want to move on to Chris and Joanna and Helene and Anil. But first, I have a question or two. Is this like in the Midwest here in the Big Ten? We have a course sharing network. And so does one institution build a course and offer it to the other one and share the courses so that they can pick and choose which ones the university wants to offer from a list of some kind?
Yes, that's the basic model. What we have said is that these courses are freely available to the member organizations. As I said, it's a big membership and open to pretty well anyone who wants to join it. And essentially what the arrangement that we have made is that if a university wants to deliver that course and wants to actually supervise that delivery, then they have to arrange that. If it's simply a passive course, they can take it and use it. But most universities want to have an exam of some sort so that they can ensure that the students have actually done the work. And that's where they then have to pay for that themselves, using whatever scheme they might have.
Is there any research on the uptake and on the results of the student learning?
I think that will be presented in a minute.
So we should go to that part. Let's go on, move on then, and part two.
Hi, thanks, Kurt. So Highland and I work for the Center for Teaching, Learning and Technology at UBC. So we're basically a centrally provisioned service unit that offers this services across the faculties and academic units and to faculty members and such. We've this building I'm showing you is the old library, and it's surrounded by the new complex learning commons, and one of our main offices is there. I've been asked to talk a bit about the history. So we've been at this for a long time, not quite, whoops. Oh, so we've changed the slide set now. Okay. So this is an older slide set. Okay, so I'll work from this one. So yeah, we started in 1949 and we've been at this for what, 70 plus years. faculty of forestry got involved in distance learning in about 1985. That's the earliest I could find, but I have a feeling that they were involved earlier. In 2000, we shifted to online distance education, and that was with WebCT. I think people are probably familiar with WebCT. That's kind of morphed into Blackboard and some of these other learning management systems. I don't know the latest variation. And that was also with under Dr. Tony Bates, who was leading our department at the time. And I think anybody involved in distance learning, online learning is aware of Tony Bates taking that leadership role. And then in 2013, UBC got involved in MOOCs. And as John said, this project actually predated it. I think I had my first meetings with John and Guang Yu in 2012, and my career has never been the same since. That's a very, very happy thing to say. What else did I want to cover? I guess go to the next slide. Yeah, so CTLT is divided into a number of teams, and Highland and I work for the course design, curriculum programming team. We work in wow, this is a very old slide. We use a team-based approach. So we work together trying to utilize the expertise from a number of individuals. So we have the course author, of course, is the subject matter expert. We have the instructional designer, and that's the role that Highland fulfills. We have web designers, multimedia producers, graphic designers, librarians, copyright staff, and whoever else may be required to be involved. I don't want to say too much more. I'm going to turn it over to Highland in a minute, but I do want to stress the role of that instructional designer in this project, where it was multinational, it was multi-universities involved, there are multi-languages involved, there are multiple educational approaches involved, and I think part of the challenge of this project was pulling all that together into a tidy package, a high quality, well-designed program and package of courses. And I think a lot of that, I guess I'm going to flag way for the instructional designer in this segment, and that I think I can attribute to someone like Highland, who's been sort of facilitating and I guess egging on all the different components and the people involved to meet their deadlines and get their projects done in order to have the program ready. And I think it's a very creative position. It's a lot of problem solving. It's a lot of communicating and keeping channels open. And I think the last thing I want to say about that role is the long-term role. I think, you know, Highland's been involved in this project for years now. There's very strong relations between Anil and Joanna and Guang Yu, John, myself, and other people involved. And I think that helps make for a lot of efficiencies and helps move the program ahead. So I will turn it over to Highland, who will give you a lot more details about the nuts and bolts of the project.
I want to make sure we get back to our questions. So if you got the rest of you could take maybe 2-3 minutes for the rest, and so we get back to the conversation.
Okay, so you want me to stop for a minute?
No, you can continue showing your slides. I'm just saying.
Oh, sorry.
I'll give you 2 or 3 more minutes for the slide part.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah. So for the development of courses, actually 2 phases of the course development. In phase 1, actually we have 4 universities from 4 countries, and at the first stage, 5 self-directed online learning courses is targeted to develop. So the concept is trying to make the course content as open education resources, and then the overall goal of the first phase is trying to create a program leading to a credential degree in the forestry. And then in phase 2, that's starting back in 2018, and on top of the first 4 universities, one of the universities from US joined the effort as well. So the phase 2 targeting have 9 new online distance courses developed. And in phase 2, the main focus is trying to still keep the content as open education resources and then add graded assessment, try to make the program as a certificate program, and trying to overall, the goal is trying to build the foundation for the future master program, try to be implemented by the participating universities. And then, so here, give you a brief idea of how the team approach for this course development. So you can see for both phases, UBC Forestry taking the lead has an academic lead, that's John Innes, Dean Innes, and then project director is Professor Wang here, and have a project coordinator like Joanna, previously is Michelle Zeng. And then you can see at participating universities that they have lead professors of each of the courses, and they might have some co-authors together working with their courses, and then they have people to support their development of the courses. For central support from the CTLT, we have a team. Chris is the coordinator. I'm the instructor designer. When possible or appropriate, we bring in web designers, media expert, and graphic designers. So, yeah. Then,
hey, 1 more minute, then we'll go back to Q&A. So if you want to pass this on to Anil, so he can have a chance to present something.
That's right. Okay, I would forward the slides to Anil. So eventually, based on those efforts, the courses are developed, and now Anil is going to tell a little bit more about implementation and the impact of the project.
Thank you, Aylan. I think I should be playing role as a Superman now because I have only 1 minute. So all those courses that we have developed as a OER, we have been using in a different format. As you can see it here, we are using it as a blended learning format, flipped classroom format. But I want to, share a bit more about instructor-led open session to our Asia Pacific University. Next slide, please. So as we discussed about it before, we because of the COVID-19, because of our leaders' vision, such as Professor Zhon, Professor Guang Yu, and also our funder, vision, we have already ahead of the curve. As you can see it here, we have been offering these instructor-led online courses since 2016, and this is just to give you an idea. During the COVID lockdown in China, as you can see it here, the time period, it was just a beginning. Nobody, I think there was very less resource for forestry education for universities. So therefore, we jump in to help to provide these courses to 32 universities from China, which is participated by undergraduate students, graduate students, as well as some professional. And later on, we extend to Asia Pacific University region, and also there were also students from South America as well. During our offering September-December 2020, there were about 135 universities of different level of students, undergraduate students, graduate students, and professionals. They actually participate in the course. Next slide, please. And so this is the global users as our courses as a open education resources. Next slides, please. So all of our learning activities is actually guided by Bloom's taxonomy of learning. We focus on developing our understanding from lower level of learning objective to acquire higher level of learning activities, such as evaluating and creating those learnings as well. Next slide, please. So our effort is not only providing them the content, but also we wanted to develop their problem solving skill, critical thinking skill, and collaborative learning skills using user-friendly Canvas system. Next slide, please. These are some of the examples how our learning activities is collaborative and reflective, like for example, in discussion question and thought-provoking question, we provided some question because those students, they are from different part of the world. As you can see it here they are sharing some of the very key important tree species and their silvicultural characteristics, use, threats for their conservation from different part of the world, from Southern Africa, from South Africa, and also in the very small place here, evolution of sustainable forest management. So we posed those courses, and students, they came up with the answer about the evolution of sustainable forest management in China, Indonesia, Myanmar, Nepal, Vietnam. So this provide a very beyond the boundary kind of collaborative learning. And apart from that, we also provided them open access manuscript. Based on that, they have to report on 6 key sentence and peer comments, peer-to-peer interaction. And sometimes we also involve this experiential learning activities such as field-based assignment and sharing. And at the end, like such as the group poster, what they do is, like for example, in this example, they learn about criterion indicator of sustainable forest management, and they actually apply those learning and evaluate some countries' sustainable forest management status from different part of the world.
Okay, and Neil, we'll probably have to stop at this point and flip us back to the conversation. I hope unless there's something critical to present, I think we want to switch us back. Thank you for doing that. All of you walking us through all that. There was one question I had on the data. You had one slide that had 9,000, and then it also said 72,000. It said 9,000 users and 72,000 what? What was the 72,000?
Sorry?
One of the slides said 9,000 users around the world, and then it said 72,000.
Let me.
No, don't go back to the slides. We'll move.
It's a 9,000 is a user, but yeah.
And the 72,000 is the number of times different people they visit our open education resources.
So we've got a question from the chat. Punya's posted this question. Do students receive course credits from their home universities or from UBC?
From their home university.
So I have a question for you. Since this is like a network, you have so many different universities, and I don't know, of course, forest management, but I know in education, we have different perspectives. I'm sure there are different theories, different perspectives, different facts, different philosophies. How do you agree upon what should go into that course? How do you always agree, or have? This is very important for managing global networks. So how do you do that?
I think I can maybe help with that question. Forestry is a professional subject area, and there is broad international agreement on what constitutes good forest management. There are sustainable forest management principles that have been developed globally and have been implemented regionally and locally. Within each country, there has been increasing emphasis on the competencies that are expected of graduates. And probably Canada is the most advanced in doing that. The US is also pretty advanced. Europe, surprisingly, is a long way behind. So what we have focused on is the competencies that are expected of a student coming out of a particular course. Can they actually do this part of forestry? And that gives us a pretty good agreement across the countries, because everything's pretty well the same. I mean, there are differences in some areas, such as, you know, we don't grow coconuts here in Vancouver, unfortunately, but the types of trees differ, but the principles remain the same around the world. And that has made it much easier to get agreement on the content that should be in these courses.
Well, it's another follow-up question, John. Well, anyone can answer. You know, we've been involved in designing things, you know, for a long time. So you have all the different experts. You have the content experts, you have the web experts, you have the design expert. Your team-based approach, how do you address that, you know? And how do you address the different views, different possibilities? And I'm sure you all want to work out the best models, but who is driving? Or everybody's driving, but eventually you have to come together to make a decision on something, right? Can you share with us the process?
John, go ahead. I can say something there too, but.
Well, I think someone else should say a little bit. Chris.
Well, I think, I mean, when the APFNet had those initial meetings, a lot of those decisions were set up. Like it was decided the courses were going to be in English, so we didn't have to worry about a lot of translation. I think also, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they gave UBC the leadership role in this, and we set the models. John and Guang Yu set the templates, and I think there's a lot of discussion on, I mean, at UBC about how the content was going to be delivered, what sort of learning approaches were going to be used. We invited, there were workshops held by that invited all the course authors, subject matter experts to UBC, and we ran workshops with them to talk about the different teaching approaches. We had curriculum experts trying to sort of make sure that the courses didn't overlap and cover the same material, so they all complemented each other. We had, you know, discussions around teaching perspectives, around copyright and all that kind of stuff. So I think we were able to sort of pull the group together over a number of years, a number of courses, and I think when the first phases went out, we were able to show that it could work, and I think that led to further support from the Asian Pacific Forest Network.
So if I were going to ask you as a group, out of all this work for so many years, any big insights you want to share others that you've learned that is, you know, I used to think like this, now it's different. And anything like that that's really worth sharing with everybody in this field? I mean, field of educational technology.
Well, I would share that designing a course online is easy, but designing a good course online is actually extremely difficult. So designing a course that students are going to maintain an interest in all the way through and ensuring their engagement is really challenging and requires a lot of innovative thinking. And we also have to allow a lot of variation to enable, you know, so it's not exactly the same for every course, that there are differences in assessment methods. There are differences that can be, give the student a bit of variation. I'll hand over to the others.
Yeah, probably I comment a little bit on that as well. So as instructional designer, it's really challenging actually try to help the instructors because UBC is trying to kind of encouraging faculty members, instructors to implement active learning in their courses. And because of the different diversity background of these professors coming from different culture and different learning models back in their home country, and then it's pretty challenging to help some of the instructors try to implement active learning in their along the way, try to kind of prompt them to thinking about different approaches to make it more engaging, more using more authentic type of assessment to try to implement in that. So some courses originally the profs has a very a kind of pretty kind of embrace this type of approach of active learning. But at the beginning, some of the profs or from some of the universities kind of do not know how to do that. So that's why, as instructor designer, we try to guide them, provide the templates, the course templates, as well as content templates, as well as assessment templates, and along the way, back and forth, this type of communication with them and prompt them to thinking about more active learning strategies for their courses. Yeah, it's a challenge.
Well, that seemed to be what Anil was getting at. And when I was cutting him off there, he was showing some of the reflective activities, some of the collaborative activities and so forth. So it sounds like you have some templates for creating interactivities and engaging activities that you're utilizing. One of the questions in our chat window relates to that. And that is, Punya's written in here, what kinds of changes or evolution has occurred either of content or of pedagogy over time as you expand the content into different regions, different countries, different contexts? How has the pedagogy or instructional design evolved with that? Anyone want to comment?
Maybe like in technology side, Highland can add on.
Actually, I would like to add on more on pedagogy aspect. Actually, for instance, for instance, like John's course, she's using the six sentence argument for critical thinking for his courses. For Guan Yu and the news courses, they use try to get the student to do the research, and then we have help them along the way, try to design the step-by-step kind of scaffolding type of milestone activities for that. And some of the instructors, for instance, from Philippines, they try to implement active inquiry model they identified from the literature, and then try to build on that model, try to implement, try to prompt students with some case studies, and then along the way, implement the steps of the inquiry learning using the online discussion as a discussion try to facilitate student conversation, try to solve problem solving. So we have quite some, I just mentioned a couple of them right now, just we have quite some innovation actually from both the instructor's perspective as well as students later on give us the feedback. We implement those, try to make it more active learning type of engaging type of experience for students. Yeah. So all the courses that I see is they use case studies. Okay, that's the main thing from the very beginning is a kind of requirements from this initiative. Yeah.
So you've talked about the pedagogical changes and transformations and so forth that have occurred over time. I want John to comment on the project as a whole. What kinds of challenges did you face early on and that you've overcome? What new challenges are you facing now that you're in the midst of trying to overcome?
I think some of the early problems were related to major differences in teaching styles across universities. So our Chinese partners in particular had a very definite way of teaching students that was totally different to how we taught in Vancouver. We have worked with our colleagues in China, and we've sent some of our professors to China to help train their professors. And I think now we have, excuse me, I think now we have a lot of agreement on how we do that teaching. Today, I think the biggest challenge is the variation in the content of the courses, so that some people have developed courses at a level that I think we need to bring up a bit to reach the standard that we would expect. And others maybe have gone a little bit over the top with their courses. So trying to find the right balance between these courses developed by different professors in different universities, working in different languages and in different contexts, bringing those together to a level where they appear to be a seamless whole, I think is our biggest challenge now for the future.
I would like to add one more thing. So the whole course was developed by module. So the forest in the different region, they have different management system. So we allow them to add their module from their region. So to enrich the whole the courses. I think this is a thing we need to do in the future, to do them more in the future.
I'm struck with a quandary in that, in talking to some of you beforehand a few weeks ago, the emphasis was open educational resources and open courseware and self-directing. And yet the discussion has been focused on courses, actual courses that people take and get credit for. So where is the emphasis? Is it on self-directed learning and contents that you're making available to anyone? Or is the emphasis on creating courses that can be replicated and utilized within a university setting for course credit and programs and degrees and all that? Or is it both? I mean, are you trying to accomplish both here or emphasize one or the other?
I think we're trying to achieve both. We have basically a version of the course that can be taken without any supervision. So that's your open educational resource. And it costs nothing, it's freely available. The value added that we allow universities to develop is to basically say, I will have an instructor who will guide students through a course, and instead of doing it on their own time, they have to do each module within a specific time span. So depending on how the university is structured, it may be a term or a semester. What we have also allowed universities to do is to say, if they want to combine these courses into a program, and we may be dealing with a difference in terminology here, because for me, a course is a single unit that someone takes, they get 3 credits at the end of it, maybe 6 credits for some courses. Whereas I know in Australia, a course is actually the entire program. So there are differences in language here. But we allow universities to put together an entire program from these courses, provided that they basically take all responsibility for ensuring that the students have reached the learning objectives that are set by that university for the course. So a university can say, we will use the examination materials that you've prepared, or we won't. For example, there may be an essay that the students have to do. Someone has to mark that. And there will be differences in standards. The students might write that essay in the local language. It doesn't have to be written in English, because they will have a local person who is administering that course from that university. So for example, if Vietnam Forestry University, just to take an example, were to decide we're going to offer these courses, they would allocate an instructor. They could just say, here's a resource, go out and use it. Or they could allocate an instructor and say, if you want credits, we want to be able to see that you have completed this course and that you have learned what you should do. And we will therefore be examining you and marking you accordingly.
So John, I want to make sure everybody gets to speak. I think Joanna has not spoken anything. I don't know if you plan to speak, but I have another question for you. Why don't you, let's say UBC, why doesn't UBC create an online program, market to all your partners instead of trying to collaborate with them? Well, don't you have a global dominance perspective? Don't you want to be the king of forest management anywhere in the world? That's a real, that's not a joke. You know, there are universities who wants to dominate, right? They want to run the whole thing. So I'm just really curious to say, is it because of money? You can charge very little from Vietnam, from Thailand, you know, from different countries. So I was just wondering about any lesson you can teach other universities or other schools right nowadays who wants to win a global dominance.
I'm going to let one of the others answer.
Well, I don't know about global dominance because a lot of the original reason for these courses to be made was about accessibility. And it was supposed to be accessible to everyone. So whether they were in, you know, a well-off country or maybe a poor country, they were supposed to be accessible. I think that's partly the case for having them as open education resources available for anyone at no charge. There was something else I was going to say and I forgot.
but Chris, when you said open education resource, it's only the content. But if they wanted credit, you still have to have people teach that, right? So you are really having two modes. One is like a MOOCs, you free and available to everybody. It's kind of a premium model or freemium, right? You got the free part, but if you want something really from UBC, you still have to pay, right? Is that right?
Yeah, actually, maybe I can jump in to add a little bit about this, and also maybe a little bit following answer for our Dean Ines topic, just to talk about the OER and also the degree or like some certificate program we have so far. Well, actually, so far with the support from APFNet, we have already have 16 courses, I think, in total, and 5 courses from the first phase, and also 6 courses from the first phase and 10 courses from the second phase. For sure, we are also planning for the third phase, and where I think more award-winning courses will be created. Well, so far, all these courses, we have been incorporated in the Canvas system, which is also the famous and also the user-friendly learning management system. And good news here that actually graduate certificate program, I think named in the forest management and conservation, has been launched by UBC Faculty of Forestry based on these online courses. And I think so far we have already received many registers from all over the world, and we will start to offer this program, I think, since this September. And also we are also making the efforts to develop some online-based master programs based on this like excellent online courses. So yeah, it's a little bit more.
Back to you, Kurt. I was just wondering about, because you know, when it comes to online, there are all these institutions who wants to expand their own, you know, trying to reach out to a lot more people and collaboration, but apparently you're doing a network and you're doing the UBC. So you're working on both. You're very smart people. Okay, so I have to, it's actually kind of funny. I am running, University of Kansas is running a doctor program in Vancouver. So I come to Vancouver a lot, you know, so, but in education. Back to you, Kurt.
So Chris is going to hit a similar theme of the global side of things. Chris?
Yeah, we have viewers certainly who will see this, who forestry is not their field, but they are interested in creating a regional or a global network within higher education. What advice would you give them, independent of your own field, just about creating and managing a network like this?
Well, none of the others are jumping in there. So I think it would help. It depends on the subject area and how well organized the subject area is. So for example, with our network, what really helped was having a funding agency that was initially created by China, Australia, and the USA, that basically had money to invest in good projects. Because it's forests and forest rehabilitation, it's a subject area that's of a lot of significance to politicians. And so the funding has continued, although Australia and the US have discontinued their part. It's also, I think, important that forestry has a very strong network of scientists and universities around the world through the International Union of Forest Research Organizations. And there is a lot of linkages that exist because of that. So it's actually easy to network with pretty well every single forestry university around the world. I doubt if I could list them all right now, but I could probably list 75% of them. And it's a lot more difficult to do that with English or with chemistry or physics or education or any of those other subjects. I don't think they are as well organized across the countries. So I think we have a lot of advantages in building those networks. The other thing I would say is a big advantage is that UBC came into this from a very strong position. We were financially sound, we could take risks, we could afford to basically share information for free at the start of the programs. So many other universities, particularly forestry universities and forestry programs, were struggling when we set out. And we've been very fortunate. We haven't struggled. We've been able to take these risks, and that has enabled us to be very altruistic over much of the program so far. But the accountants are now banging on the door, and that's why we're beginning to say, okay, we'll put together a program, but people will have to pay to get credits from UBC to actually do that. If it was Faculty of Forestry, we'd probably do it for free, but the university won't let us do that. So that's where we start running into the traditional university economics.
I used to be an accountant. I don't remember banging on any doors. I remember going in a secluded room oftentimes and not allowed to talk to anyone. But your funding then has, the Australians bugged out and the US bugged out. You just got China. So are the Chinese people interested in research? And are you collecting research data related to this project? And if you are, or if you're not, would you be open to having my students do some research on this?
I think that's our next step. So actually try to make sure the quality of these course development. When we design the courses, implement that ADDIE model in the course development after the completion of the development of each courses, before it's launching or kind of implement, we have a procedure there, do self and peer review using the QN quality standards for online course design. Actually, in the phase 1, we used a in-house quality checklist, kind of modify that. And then in the phase 2, we specifically wanted, because it's a really fully online and with full-fledged assessment pieces. And then we are now in the phase 2 is the peer and the self-review from subject matter experts as well as instructors, and later on instructor designers. Our team is going to do the self and peer review. It's underway. And then for each of the launching or the running of the pilot running for the courses, Anu is leading for those volume running. For each of the offering, actually, we have post-course surveys, try to get student feedback. And then definitely, well, then for the phase 2, the new courses, probably that's the planning to be launched in September, right? So that's probably, well, then Dean John, and probably later on down the road, we are going to put our heads together, try to follow up with some probably course by course target the type of research teaching research maybe, or subject matter, whatever the type of research that Dean John would like to go for that. And then CTLT here is going to support that. And then we are.
Sounds like it's well thought out, more than what I expected, actually, because you hadn't talked about the research that was ongoing. So it's good, enlightening to hear that you are planning this out. And UBC has been a leader in the ed tech space for a long time. We often hear about San Francisco and what's going on there. We might hear about what's happening in Boston and MIT and Harvard with Chris and other people. But it's in the other places of the world, Denver, Minneapolis, and Vancouver, which were the online learning hotbeds or hubs 20, 25 years ago. There was a lot happening there, in Madison and various other places around the country. And Vancouver in particular has been a shining light. And so I'm really glad that we had a chance to hear from you and hear about the project that's been underway for quite a long time, much longer than I had thought it's been going on. So I wish you well in the future and the future directions with the project. And I welcome you to come in and tell us and then update us as to the progress that you're making. I want to introduce briefly our number 52, episode 52 next week. We're going to hear from East Asia female leaders who have been in the field for a long time. Okwa Lee from Chungbuk National University in Korea. In-sung Jung from International Christian University in Japan, who nearly became the president of that university last year and has written many books about online and blended learning. And Meifeng Liu from Beijing Normal University. All three of them know each other, so it's going to be kind of interactive in and amongst each other. They're not, they've known each other for decades, and I've known them for decades. So looking forward to that. I hope you join us for it.